The first time I saw her, fire was raining from the sky. Not the apocalyptic kind, just molten metal cascading in brilliant orange arcs as her torch cut through steel. But in that moment, standing in the doorway of that dusty workshop, I might as well have been witnessing the birth of a star. Hey everyone, thanks for clicking on today's story. If you enjoy tales of unexpected love, second chances, and finding beauty in the most unlikely places, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything, and there's plenty more where this came from. I never believed in love at first sight until the day she lifted her welding mask. My name is Daniel Reeves, and 6 months ago, I was a broken man. Literally. 3 shattered ribs, a fractured femur, and a spine that doctors said would never fully heal. The motorcycle accident took more than my mobility, it stole my career as a construction foreman, my sense of purpose, and eventually, my fiancée. Melissa couldn't handle the new me, as she put it. The one who needed help getting into the shower. The one who couldn't promise her the future we'd planned. I don't blame her. Not anymore. The physical therapy was grueling, but it was the emptiness that truly hollowed me out. Each day blended into the next, pain meds, exercises, daytime television, and the 4 walls of my apartment closing in a little tighter. My sister Jen was the only one who refused to let me disappear completely. You need a hobby, she insisted one afternoon, scrolling through her phone while I pretended to watch a baseball game. Something to do with your hands that isn't reaching for the remote. I laughed bitterly. Like what? Basket weaving? She didn't laugh back. Instead, she showed me a local listing for an adaptive metalworking class. The instructor specializes in teaching people with physical limitations. Veterans, accident survivors, people like you. I'm not an artist, I protested. Neither was I before I started painting, Jen countered. Just try one class. For me. That's how I found myself standing in the doorway of Sparks Metal Art Studio on a Wednesday afternoon, leaning heavily on my cane, watching a small figure in a heavy leather apron and welding mask bend steel to her will. The workshop was housed in an old converted warehouse, with high ceilings and massive windows that let in streams of natural light. The air smelled of metal and heat and possibility. Several workstations were set up around the space, each one modified in subtle ways, lowered tables, specialized tools, custom seating. A few other students were already there, working on their projects with varying degrees of concentration. But my eyes were drawn to her, the instructor, as she demonstrated a technique to an older man in a wheelchair. Her movements were precise, confident, almost like a dance. When she finished, she stepped back, and with one gloved hand, lifted her welding mask. I expected a grizzled old shop teacher, maybe an ex-military type with calloused hands and a no-nonsense attitude. What I didn't expect was her. Golden brown skin flushed from the heat. A constellation of freckles across high cheekbones. Eyes the color of amber caught in sunlight. A single braid of dark hair escaping from beneath her bandana. And a smile that hit me like a physical force when she noticed me hovering uncertainly in the doorway. You must be Daniel, she said, crossing the room with an easy grace. I'm Eliza Santos. Welcome to Sparks. Her handshake was firm, her palm rough with calluses. Up close, I noticed a thin scar running along her jawline, and the slight asymmetry it gave her features only made her more striking. I've never done anything like this before, I admitted, suddenly self-conscious of my cane, of the way I leaned to one side to take pressure off my bad leg. Perfect, she replied. Blank slates are my specialty. That first class, I didn't create anything worth keeping. My hands shook from both nervousness and the lingering effects of my injuries. The protective gear felt awkward and heavy. The tools were foreign in my grip. But Eliza was patient, adjusting my stance, guiding my movements, never once making me feel less capable than anyone else in the room. The metal remembers, she told me as I struggled with a simple bend. Every time you heat it, cool it, strike it, it remembers. It gets stronger in the broken places. Sound familiar? I looked up sharply, but there was no pity in her eyes. Just understanding, and something that looked remarkably like respect. By the end of that first 3-hour session, I was exhausted, sore in new places, and covered in metal dust. But for the first time in months, the pain in my body felt earned rather than imposed. And when Eliza asked if I'd be back next week, I didn't hesitate before saying yes. I told myself it was the metalworking that drew me back. The satisfaction of creating something tangible. The focus it required, leaving no room for self-pity. The community of other students, many with their own visible and invisible scars, who nodded in recognition when I winced while standing too quickly. But I knew, even then, that it was her. Eliza Santos had a way of seeing people, truly seeing them, that made you feel both exposed and accepted. She never asked about my accident directly, but somehow created space for me to share pieces of my story between hammer strikes and welding beads. In return, she offered fragments of her own. She'd learned welding from her father, a shipyard worker in Oakland. Studied fine arts in college before dropping out to apprentice with a renowned metal sculptor. Started teaching after a gallery owner told her she had more talent for inspiring than creating, a comment she'd transformed from an insult into a calling. Art saved me, she said simply one afternoon, helping me adjust my torch. Now I get to pass that lifeline to others. Week by week, my projects grew more ambitious. A simple garden stake became a delicate wind chime. A clumsy candle holder evolved into an intricate tabletop sculpture. My hands grew steadier, my body stronger. I started arriving early to class and staying late, soaking in Eliza's knowledge and, though I wouldn't admit it then, her presence. The other students noticed, of course. Maria, a retired nurse with Parkinson's who created surprisingly delicate wire sculptures, raised her eyebrows knowingly whenever Eliza spent extra time at my station. Jackson, a veteran with a prosthetic leg who crafted functional art from scrap metal, teased me about my private lessons. I denied it all, even to myself. After Melissa left, I'd locked away any expectation of romance. My body was broken. My future uncertain. What could I possibly offer someone like Eliza, who moved through the world with such purpose and grace? Besides, she was my teacher. She was kind to everyone. Her lingering glances, her casual touches when correcting my technique, they meant nothing beyond professional attention. Or so I told myself, until the night of the gallery showing. 3 months into my metalworking journey, Eliza organized an exhibition featuring student work at a local community arts center. It was a bigger deal than she let on. I discovered later that several prominent collectors and gallery owners would be attending, interested in her reputation for discovering diamond-in-the-rough talent. I almost didn't go. My piece, an abstract representation of a phoenix rising from twisted metal, felt too personal, too revealing to display publicly. And the thought of navigating a crowded gallery, with nowhere to sit when my leg inevitably began to throb, filled me with anxiety. But Jen insisted, even offering to be my date for moral support. "You've been talking about this Eliza person for weeks," she said. "I need to see if she lives up to the hype." The gallery was packed when we arrived, the white walls adorned with metal creations of all shapes and sizes. Each piece was accompanied by a small placard with the artist's name and a brief statement. I spotted Maria's delicate wire birds, Jackson's functional yet beautiful lamp made from repurposed machine parts, and several other works from my classmates. And there, in a prime spot near the center of the main wall, was my phoenix. Under the gallery lighting, it looked different, more powerful, more intentional than it had in the workshop. The twisted metal caught the light in unexpected ways, creating shadows and reflections that seemed to animate the piece. Several people were gathered around it, pointing and discussing. "That's yours?" Jen whispered, squeezing my arm. "Danny, it's incredible." Before I could respond, a familiar voice spoke behind us. "He captured something essential there, didn't he?" The beauty in breaking and becoming. I turned to find Eliza, and for a moment, couldn't speak. Gone was the workshop instructor in stained jeans and protective gear. This Eliza wore a simple black dress that skimmed her curves, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, her only jewelry a pendant that looked like a small, perfectly formed metal teardrop. "You clean up nice, Reeves," she said with a smile, her eyes taking me in. I'd made an effort too, my first time wearing a button-down shirt and proper pants since the accident. "So do you," I managed. "I mean, you look beautiful." Jen cleared her throat pointedly beside me. "Oh. Eliza, this is my sister, Jen. Jen, this is Eliza Santos, the incredible teacher I've told you about." The two women shook hands, exchanging pleasantries while I tried to regain my composure. Then Jen, with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer, spotted someone she absolutely had to say hello to across the room and disappeared, leaving Eliza and me alone. "Your piece is getting a lot of attention," Eliza said, nodding toward my phoenix. "Carmela Vega, the owner of Threshold Gallery downtown, asked if you're represented." I laughed nervously. "I told you, I'm not an artist. Evidence suggests otherwise." Her eyes held mine. "You've come a long way in 3 months, Daniel. I had a good teacher. You had determination. And talent you didn't recognize." She hesitated, then added softly, "You see yourself as broken. But from the first day, I saw what you could become." The gallery seemed to fade around us, the murmur of conversations, the clink of wine glasses, all receding like a tide. There was only Eliza, standing close enough that I could smell her perfume, something earthy and metallic and entirely her. "Why did you really start teaching?" I asked, the question emerging before I could consider it. A shadow crossed her face. "That's a longer story than we have time for tonight. I'd like to hear it sometime. Maybe over dinner?" The words hung between us, and I immediately regretted them. I was her student. She was my instructor. There were boundaries, propriety, a dozen reasons why this was inappropriate. But then she smiled, not her usual confident instructor smile, but something softer, almost shy. "I'd like that," she said. "But not as your teacher." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've outgrown my beginner class, Daniel. Next session, you should move up to the advanced workshop with Jackson and Maria." She touched my arm lightly. "Which means I wouldn't be your instructor anymore. Just a fellow artist." Fellow artist. The term sent a strange thrill through me, equal parts pride and disbelief. "So about that dinner." I began, but was interrupted by a sharp tap on a microphone. The gallery director was calling for everyone's attention, preparing to make a speech about the exhibition. Eliza squeezed my hand quickly. "Find me after," she whispered, before moving toward the front of the room. I never got the chance. As the director spoke about the transformative power of art and community, praising Eliza's work with adaptive artists, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Raised voices, a crash of breaking glass, and then, impossibly, flames licking up the wall where a candle had been knocked into a display of paper programs. Fire in an art gallery is terrifying enough. Fire in a room full of people with mobility issues is a nightmare. The crowd surged toward the main exit, creating a bottleneck. I saw Maria stumble, Jackson trying to maneuver his wheelchair through the panic, a young man with a service dog frozen in place. And Eliza moving against the tide, guiding people toward a side exit I hadn't noticed, her voice cutting through the chaos with calm authority. I should have followed the crowd. Instead, I found myself limping toward Maria, offering my arm, my cane, anything to help her reach safety. Then returning for the young man with the dog, speaking softly to both until they moved toward the exit. My legs screamed in protest, but adrenaline carried me forward. The smoke was thickening, the sprinkler system finally activating, raining water down on artwork and patrons alike. Through the haze, I saw Eliza helping Jackson navigate his wheelchair over a threshold, then turning back to scan the room. Our eyes met across the space. Relief flooded her face, followed immediately by alarm. "Daniel, get out now," she shouted. I turned to see what had caused her fear and saw the problem. A large metal installation was teetering precariously, its support compromised by the water and commotion. Directly in its path stood an elderly woman, disoriented and alone. I didn't think. I moved. Later, the paramedics would tell me I was lucky. The installation had missed my head, glancing off my shoulder instead. The same shoulder that had been relatively unscathed in my motorcycle accident, ironically enough. Now it sported a deep gash and what would eventually be diagnosed as a separated AC joint. But in the moment, all I registered was pain, followed by Eliza's face appearing above me, her hands pressing something against my bleeding shoulder, her voice steady as she told me to stay still, help was coming, I would be okay. "The woman?" I managed to ask. "Safe," Eliza assured me. "Everyone's out. Just you being stubborn." "Learn from the best," I mumbled, and was rewarded with her strained laugh. The next few hours passed in a blur of ambulance sirens, emergency room lights, and medical jargon. X-rays, stitches, a new prescription for pain that I was determined not to fill. Jen arrived, frantic until she confirmed I wasn't seriously injured, then alternating between scolding me for heroics and grudging pride. It was nearly midnight when the curtain around my ER bay rustled, and Eliza appeared. Her dress was smoke-stained, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her face etched with exhaustion. She'd never looked more beautiful. "You're still here," I said, struggling to sit up straighter. "Of course I am." She moved to my bedside, her eyes taking in the bandage on my shoulder, the hospital gown, the 4 in my arm. "How bad?" 12 stitches and a separated shoulder. "I'll live." I attempted a smile. "Though I might need some accommodations in metal class for a while." She didn't return the smile. Instead, she reached out, her fingers hovering just above my bandaged shoulder before withdrawing. "You could have been killed," she said quietly. "But I wasn't. This time." Her voice hardened. "Do you have any idea what it was like, watching you run toward danger instead of away from it? Seeing you go down under that sculpture?" I thought, she broke off, turning away. Understanding dawned slowly through my painkiller haze. "You've lost someone before." Her shoulders tensed, then slumped. When she turned back, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "My husband," she said simply. 5 years ago. He was a firefighter." The pieces clicked into place, her scars, both visible and hidden. The way she'd built a life around helping others rebuild theirs. The pendant she wore, not a teardrop, I realized now, but a flame. "I'm sorry," I said, inadequate but sincere. "After Marco died, I couldn't create anything." The metal felt cold, lifeless in my hands. She spoke softly, as if sharing a secret. "Teaching was the only way back to myself. Seeing others find their strength reminded me of my own." I reached for her hand, and this time, she let me take it. Her skin was warm against mine, her calluses familiar now. "I'm not going anywhere, Eliza." "You can't promise that," she whispered. "No one can." "No," I agreed. "But I can promise to try. To be careful with this second chance I've been given." I squeezed her hand gently. "With all my chances." Something shifted in her expression then, fear giving way to something more complex, more hopeful. "The doctor says they're discharging me soon," I continued. "And I still owe you dinner." A small smile tugged at her lips. "You're asking me out from a hospital bed? After nearly getting crushed saving a stranger? Is that a yes?" She leaned down, her free hand coming up to cup my cheek, and pressed her lips to mine, a kiss so gentle it might have been a whisper.